I wasn't going to give that talk tonight. But then the universe made it so that here we are. I was sitting at my desk today. I was thinking, so what do we do now? What do we do now when we wake up one day and we learn that it is possible that someone would drive a truck through hundreds of people, young and old, babies, strollers, grandparents, people who on a balmy summer night gathered together by the thousand to celebrate democracy, watching the fireworks of a nation. And just like that, speeding up through the crowd like a bowling ball through pins, mowing down dozens of passerbys. And I sit at my desk and I said to myself, how did we get here? How did we get here? What is the level of despair? The level of anger? The level of estrangement, of alienation, of utter loneliness that would push someone to do such a thing? What have we done? What is this Western society we have created, we have inherited, that disconnects us in such profound ways, that disconnects us from each other, that disconnects us from our own inner humanity? And we can go around and point the finger at ISIS. We can blame the brainwashing they are able to do across borders on the global scale, thanks to the new technology, the means, the gory websites, the impressive means of recruiting that they seem to be having. We can point a finger on the outside until the moment and the time when we're going to have to stop doing that and look within and ask ourselves the hard questions. Because ISIS doesn't exist in a vacuum. ISIS isn't finding it so easy to recruit because they are so good. If putting up a gorgeous website was all it took to recruit hundreds of people, this congregation would be filled to the gills. There's something else that we are asked to pay attention to. That we are creating the fertile ground from which groups like ISIS can take roots and grow. There is a major malaise, a deep-seated trauma of isolation, of loneliness, of disparity, of individualism, of lack of common purpose and ideals that are seeding such group as ISIS, that are seeding the violence that we see almost daily now. A generation growing up feeling left out, feeling disenfranchised, feeling that whatever the goodies that our modern Western societies are dangling in front of them, they will forever remain out of reach. People that are feeling ghettoized, marginalized. People that are looking for meaning, like we are. And it reminds me, when I was 17, 16, 15, those years, at the time I was both an anarchist and a Zionist. I don't know how those two would reconcile, but that was the conflict within me. I could hold those opposite, maybe, perspectives. And I was asking myself those questions. What is this society we live in? I was getting close to getting to college. And my parents, my grandparents, everybody was telling me, this is the path, this is the way. You get a good education, you get a good job, and you become like us. The truth is, back in those days, it was harder to become like us, to be as successful as they were. The economy was changing already in the late 80s, in the 90s. And for us, that generation that was coming up, the best we could hope was to do as well as our parents. And I thought to myself, is that the purpose of a human life? Is that what we as human beings are called to be doing? To amass money, wealth, power? Is that the purpose of our human lives? And at 16, 17, you're an idealist. I hope you are. If not, you are in deep trouble. And so I couldn't see myself staying in France. I couldn't see myself going down the path that people wanted me to go down. I didn't want to do what has already been done. I didn't want to be a clone of my parents. So I left. I had been raised, nurtured with this Zionistic ideal, and I thought Israel was going to be the answer. Here was a country, a new country, and they were blazing trails. They were pioneers, chalutzim and chalutzot, those Israelis pioneers. They were making the desert green again. Surrounded by all these enemies, they stood their ground and they created a Jewish state that was moving forward the ideals of compassion, of what humanity was supposed to be, I was reading all these books and I was going. And when I arrived, I didn't realize at that time, but I had come 2 generations too late. And the books that I was reading were written 2 generations ago. And it took me 10 years of living there, of participating in the life, of serving in the army, because I believed in the project of Israel, in the common national movement that this was. And then over the years, especially the last few years, I realized that what the Israelis really wanted wasn't anymore what the pioneers had in mind. Tel Aviv wanted to be the next Miami. Jerusalem wanted to be the next Tehran. And that was the end of me there. And I'm thinking, sitting at my desk this morning, I'm thinking, those young generations in America, in France, in Europe, in England, are sitting at their desk and they're asking themselves the same question. What is my life about? What is my prospect in this society I was born into? And I was thinking, when I was born and raised in a family of somewhat affluent people, white, educated, living in nice neighborhoods in Nice, in Lyon, I had all the chances that I could grab. And I'm thinking, these young generations of children and children of immigrants who have a darker skin, who speak with an accent, who live in those neighborhoods that nobody wants to even drive through, who are plagued by drugs and violence. What is their prospect at the end of the day? Where do they go? What are we providing them? What is the common purpose of France going forward? What is the common purpose, the goal, the vision of America going forward that we could rally the next generation around? And I'm thinking, they've got nothing. And they're feeling alone. We seem to be on the edge of living in a pretty disenchanted world with a lot of disenchanted people walking around. And I think that the ingredient that might be missing is exactly that: enchantment. We live in a disenchanted world. We have lost touch with the enchantment of this planet. We have lost touch with the capacity to stand in awe of the world, to see the sacred, the holy, in the places we find ourselves, in the moments we live through, in the people we encounter. We have collapsed so much into our narcissistic perspective and our egocentric view that we no longer are able to breathe into the sacred of every moment. You know, every Shabbat that we meet together, I invite all of us to step into the sacred of this space. And I really mean it. I really mean it. This space is a sacred space. It is infused with the presence of the One. It is built from the essence of the divine. It is made up of us, expression of the divine. This is a sacred place. This is sacred space. You know, when Moses went to see God at the burning bush, the first thing that God says to Moses is, take off your shoes, your sandals, because the ground on which you are standing is holy. the ground on which we are standing is holy. The ground we walk on, wherever we walk, is holy. We should be walking through our day barefoot to remind ourselves of the sacredness of this earth, of the trees around us, the birds, and the people. This week's Torah portion speaks exactly of that. You were wondering where I was going to bring up the weekly Torah portion. Actually, it's not this week, it's next week, but since we're not meeting next week, I made an executive direct decision and I brought next week's Torah portion this week. The king of Moab, Balak. Balak has a problem. Balak woke up one morning and he saw at the borders of his land the tribes of Israel encamped, ready to perhaps invade. And he's panicked. He gathers his soldiers, he gathers his troops to meet them. But they've heard of the might of the Israelites. And they are concerned that they will not be able to withstand their forces in battle. So Balak has a really good idea. He's going to bring in the joker. He's going to bring in the world-renowned curser called Bilam. Bilam is known all over the Middle East that whatever he curses, he's cursed. Whatever he blesses is blessed, but most importantly, whatever he curses is cursed. So Balak brings Bilam to the border and asks him in front of all his troops to curse with his greatest curse those Israelite tribes. Bilam goes up one of the hills, tries to curse the Israelites, but can't. He goes down the first hill. He tries a second time up top another hill, tries to curse the Israelites, but can't. Balak says, try one more time on the third hill. Go up there and curse them. At the top of your lungs, curse them. We could all hear you. Bilam goes up the third hill, and there again he is unable to curse the Israelites. And instead, he shouts for all to hear a gorgeous blessing of the Israelite tribes encamped at the bottom of those hills. And it's funny, the rabbis are trying to figure out what was such an incredible sight that Bilam felt compelled to bless and not curse. What was so special in the encampment? What did they do? The rabbis, they always go down to the nitty-gritty of things. And they start to talk about the fact that the reason for Bilam blessing was that he saw that the camps was set up in a way that each tent of each individual family, the entrance of each tent would never face the entrance of another family's tent. And therefore, throughout the camp, 3 million people encamped in the plains of Moab, everybody could have privacy. That's what the rabbis are imagining is the reason for Bilam to see and to be awed by this design and the way these people respect one another. And that's all fine and good. And at some level, it has many things to teach us. But I also think that at another level, it misses the point altogether. Because it doesn't matter. What Bilam saw wasn't how the tents were put together. What Bilam saw, what Bilam experienced is the divine presence shining through the Israelites' encampment. Bilam was overwhelmed by the holiness he felt in that moment. struck in awe of the presence of the Holy One in that place. You know, one of the names of God in Hebrew is Hamakom, the place. It's not a mistake. It is there to remind us that every place is holy. Every place holds the divine presence. And that's what we have forgotten. We have forgotten the enchantment of place. We have forgotten the holiness that each being is, that each place is. We are living in a chrome world where we have reduced every human aspect of life to egocentric pursuits. And we have disconnected from the polychromatic possibility of what life is about, what this planet is offering us. And we have to reclaim that. We have to reclaim the sacredness. We have to reclaim the enchantment of our lives, of our planet, lest we lose it. Lest our Western democracies perish. And perhaps this is the role of the mystics, to do that. So you are in the right place. Because this is the purpose of our congregation. This is the purpose of this synagogue. To reclaim the enchantment of our lives.